All right, let's go get started. I don't do the West thing. I just do, hey, welcome back to Ty and some other guy, since the other guy is fucking off right now. I don't even know what he's doing. Apparently he's gone for like 3 months, having like
that guy
extended wank somewhere or something. Like locked himself in the masturbation closet for the next 3 months. I don't know.
He doesn't need to do that.
Yeah, he could just do it here, right? We wouldn't care.
I mean, I might, but I mean, he doesn't need to do it there.
So, Brett Simmons, a longtime friend of the show and world famous director of many fine horror films.
Well, several fine horror films. I don't know if it's like world famous, like maybe like West Coast, like semi recognizable. I don't know.
Multiple members of his extended family know that he's a director.
For sure. Not all of them, but like the ones that I talk to most.
Sure, they know. So in that way, famous. And we were going to talk, we had some choices about what we were going to talk about, but both of us just recently watched Furiosa, because it's available on streaming. I think it's on HBO now or something. I had rented it before it came on HBO, so I'd watched it recently. And this is a podcast that prides itself on being 4 months behind the times. So now, 4 months after everybody stopped giving a shit about it, we're going to talk about Furiosa.
Yeah, are people done talking about it? Because now
it's on HBO now. So now, see, now we're topical.
How soon after you rented it did it start playing on HBO?
Oh, about a week. About a week.
That's how it always happens.
Like I paid my $10 to rent it, and then a week later, they're like, "Oh, here it is for free."
Like, come on. Yep,
that's right. I'm fine with George Miller taking the 3 cents he gets out of the every $10 rental.
He deserves it. He deserves it.
Yeah. So, Furiosa, the much anticipated follow-up to, I thought, the best movie of the year it came out in, which was Fury Road.
Fury Road was incredible.
Any list that doesn't have Fury Road in the top 5 of that year is a bad list. That list 100%. Is an irrelevant list. Yeah.
I mean, it's really on a decades list too. Like that thing is like a miracle. That movie to me, I don't even know how it exists.
Right.
It's amazing.
And I'll always love Road Warrior because it was like the first movie like that I saw. And it holds up. It's still a fantastic film. I still enjoy watching it. But I don't think I can argue anymore that Fury Road isn't the best Mad Max movie ever made.
Oh, it's not even. It was when Fury Road came out, I was expecting the older, like the original Mad Max movies. And so I was kind of delayed in going to see it. And I was like, yeah, I mean, of course I want to see it. It looks good. And then that movie just like, it was so beyond expectation and description. I couldn't even believe it.
Yeah, it was one of those ones where I saw it and then I saw it at the theater that I could walk to from my house at the time. And then the next day I'm like, I think I'm going to walk to the theater again. Like it was like a next day, where I think I need to go sit and watch that again.
But it's interesting though, because, okay, so talk about the expectations I had going into Fury Road were just completely wrong because I was thinking the original movies and that Fury Road is so much more. But then my expectations because of Fury Road were so high that going into Furiosa, there was a little bit of a a knee-jerk reaction.
It suffered the opposite problem. So, a lot of people went in Fury Road going, this is going to suck. There's no Mel Gibson. It won't be good. It'll be a CGI disaster. And then you watch it, you're like, no, this is incredible. This is George Miller at the top of his game.
Yes.
All practical. And the guy playing, what's his name? The Bane. Why can't I remember?
Tom Hardy.
Yeah. Tom Hardy is great as Max.
He's phenomenal. Yep.
He's so underplays it. He doesn't try to do a Mel Gibson. He just tries to do guy who has seen too much shit in the wasteland and doesn't talk much.
Yes, exactly. Right? I totally agree with that.
Nails that. And so then you come out of that and you're like, this might, as I said, it's like top 5 movie of that year. Yeah. My favorite movie of that year. Maybe top 5 of the decade. Then they go, oh, they're doing a follow-up with an actor I really like. I can't remember anybody's name anymore. Anya Taylor-Joy.
She's
who
awesome.
I thought was fantastic in Queen's Gambit.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh, yes.
One of my favorite low-budget little known horror movies of the year came out was The Witch, where she plays the daughter.
She's phenomenal. The Witch, Last Night in Soho, Edgar Wright. She's so great.
She's great. So when they're like, oh, they're going to do a Furiosa movie and they're going to get Anya Taylor-Joy and it's going to be directed by George Miller again, I'm like, well, then clearly it's going to be amazing.
They had my ticket before they made the movie. It's like,
exactly.
Done.
And the problem then is that going into Fury Road expecting nothing and getting one of the best movies of the decade, then you go into Furiosa and you're expecting this has to be one of the best movies of the decade.
Right. Exactly.
And as much as I liked all of the elements, I still think Anya Taylor-Joy is great.
Yeah.
I still love the way George Miller tells a story.
Yep.
Thor as the bad guy is awesome.
It's so great. Yeah.
Yeah. Even the fake nose they gave him totally worked for me.
It totally worked for me too.
All of that stuff is fine, but the movie doesn't work. And I have some theories on what about it isn't working. I would love to hear. And a lot of the stuff I want to talk about is director related, which is why it was exciting for me to be able to talk to an actual director, because I am not a director. I work in TV. I tell directors what to do. I do not understand their job. I don't know how they do what they do. I'm like, hey, make a scene where this guy likes that guy, and then they fight at the end, and they go do that. And I'm like, I don't know how you did it, but it was awesome. Great, good job, guys.
So good. But it's interesting because I'm curious to talk on a story side with you, because I have such a weird feeling about the movie because the stuff I like in it I really like a lot.
Yeah. Yes.
And then the stuff that I don't, but I understand them. So it's just funny is I had a really mixed reaction to it, mostly positive, but same thing. I thought it was going to be Fury Road, and it was almost like when the movie was done, I had to kind of digest it for a little while, and I feel like the next day, rather than running to see it again, I was kind of accepting what it was because it wasn't what I wanted it to be. But I respected what it chose to be.
I kind of wonder if you had never seen either of them, you watch them in the other order, if it wouldn't be a much better movie.
Mm-hmm.
You'd watch it and you'd be like, oh, that's cool. It's cool wasteland stuff. Then you'd see Fury Road and we go, oh, this is the most amazing sequel of all time. But I think it's definitely a movie that suffers in comparison to its predecessor.
Yeah, I get that. I feel like they should have been made in reverse order. Like if you saw Furiosa, like if that movie came out first, and I guess now moving into the future, like you said, someone could watch it first. But like it's kind of like this like biblical epic. I didn't realize I was going to be watching a movie that spanned the majority of her life leading to really most of her life until I wasn't ready for that scope of story. I was like, wait, what? Because Fury Road is just a chase.
So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. So ways in which Furiosa didn't work for me compared to Fury Road, and that's one of the big ones, is Fury Road is so laser focused.
Yes.
It is one thing. It is a bunch of women trying to escape this horrible guy who has them captive. They're trying to escape that. They pick up this random dude along the way who's like a wasteland warrior, and it is those women plus that guy trying to get away from all the pursuing hordes of this warlord who wants the women back. Yes. And then they get to the place where they think they're going to go. They realize that actually isn't going to be their refuge, and they make the decision to try and go back and take from the warlord the place that they had been held captive, but take it for their own.
Yeah.
And the story is a chase going one way, a decision, and then a chase going the other way. And that's it. That's all it is.
That's it. It's incredibly
everything else is
simple.
implied.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Totally. And that's what was so refreshing about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's no like romance between Max and Furiosa. It is implied that he grows to respect her. It is implied that she grows to rely on him. But that's it. There's no dialogue saying any of those things. You just see it in the way that they act, see it in the way they behave toward each other. They don't ham it up with a bunch of other baloney. It's just, we start out, it's the classic. They started as enemies, then they become friends. That's it.
Right, yeah.
In the course of this one chase. In one chase, they're just like, all right, now we're friends.
One chase. Exactly.
Then you get to Furiosa, and Furiosa is trying to tell a much bigger and more complicated story.
Yeah, like a huge story, like so much more going on. I just was not ready for that the first time that I watched it. I was like, oh, I mean, I don't know about you, but like it must be like the first 10 or 15 minutes when we meet her as a daughter or as a child. And then she like gets taken by those guys and it's all like her mom and like basically the society of women that we don't even, there isn't even an explanation. You just understand there is this oasis in the middle of the desert where they live. And that makes them like, there's so much about the story that you just get visually. And that whole sequence of the mom going to rescue her, I remember watching that going, I really hope the whole movie is this.
Yes.
But I know it's not because Anya Taylor-Joy isn't in it. But it's the same thing that I loved about Fury Road, which was a very simple objective, a very simple mission, and the drama of the complications, but then also the character development of the strategy to overcome, or like the little pivots that they make. You know, it was I was like, I don't want this to end. Yeah,
the rescue is one of the best sequences in the movie.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's as you said, it's so clear. It's got the laser focus that Fury Road had. It is. Daughter has been captured. Mom goes to get her. Turns out, mom is a fucking badass.
Yes. And you only learn more and more how much she is.
Right? And you're like, well, yeah, clearly she's going to get her daughter back because she's a fucking badass. Look at her just wrecking these dudes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and the sort of drawn out early chase sequence where you know she's following the guys that have the daughter, and every now and then they stop to like drink water or something, and one of them just gets blown off his motorcycle, like, oh, mom's still back there.
Yep. And it was like the brilliance of like every time there was like a hurdle put in front of her. I mean, there's a few times just in that short sequence where I'm like, oh, well, how is she going to catch up with her now? And then, like when she gets lit on fire, you know, and now she's she's lit on fire while she's saving her daughter. And I was like, this is crazy. Like nothing stops this lady. It was brilliant. Like I loved that.
They do some nice character building for Furiosa too, because even though she's a little kid and she can't defeat these guys, she's doing what she can to help. Like when she bites through the fuel cable or the fuel tube and you know, that kind of stuff where she's trying to help.
Yes. And you can tell she's like doing the thing they always train like kidnap victims to do, where she's kind of clocking her enemy, right? Like when she's in the tent, she first meets Chris Hemsworth, like you really see her clocking everybody and you're like, oh man, I can't wait to see where this goes.
Yeah. And then we get to more grown-up Furiosa. Right. And I think so there's this middle section. I think the beginning is very strong, and I think the end gets strong again when she's getting away. It's this middle part where they're trying to tell so much story about Furiosa. Yes. And the movie completely loses focus for an hour.
I agree with that. You really start to lose there's points where it starts to feel like it's Chris Hemsworth's story a little bit more.
Exactly.
You know, like they're really setting that up. And I was like, okay, I mean, I want to know, but I don't feel like I need to know. And then I had a little bit of a weird reaction to, like even, is it Immortan Joe? Like he's the bad guy who comes back from Fury Road. Yeah. You're almost sort of like siding with him because he's rescuing her, but you know he's not a good dude, and you know this whole clan isn't good dudes. So you're like, we
know he keeps women as slaves.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, I guess I'm supposed to be happy for her, but I'm not, but I don't know. And it was, I came up against that quite a few times watching the movie.
Yeah. That is the sort of muddiness of this middle section where I agree with you that we spend so much time with Chris Hemsworth as I forget what they call him.
I can't remember either. Wait, I'm going to look it up.
Dementus or
Dementus. Yeah, that's
I was going to say he has like a Harry Potter bad guy name.
Yeah.
Totally. But yeah, Dementus, you know, and we spend so much time with him that like you said, it starts to feel like his story. Yeah. And when you know we're supposed to be following her. And then the other moment that kind of threw me for a loop is they bring in another character who is a great character, but he comes in the movie so late.
Yes.
That it just feels like so with the guy who's driving the war rig that she winds up being the partner of.
Yeah.
Where she wins his respect in one of the early battles, and he's like, come on, I'm going to teach you how to do this.
Yes.
And then I have this moment where I'm like, God, I wish this was the story.
Yes.
I wish the story was this girl who doesn't know how to get away, this guy who recognizes a future badass in her and goes, come with me. I'm going to teach you to be the badass you're supposed to be. And someday in the future, when you've learned everything I have to teach you, then take it and use it to get away.
Yes.
And he knows that's what he's doing. He knows he's going to be helping her get away. But it's such a small little slice in the middle of the movie that's so good that I'm like, just this is the movie. What are we doing with all this other shit?
I know. That's what's so crazy is it's almost like you're watching 3 different movies because
I think that's exactly right.
Which is fine in one sense, but I really was just missing that laser focus, because I liked 2 of the movies within this one, but I didn't like 2 of the other ones,
Right.
Like I really like that story too, where she's getting trained by, I know the actor was like Tom Burke. I can't remember what his character name was, but
Praetorian Jack.
Praetorian Jack.
Yeah.
See, I mean, George Miller wasn't doing us any favors as far as giving them names we could remember easily, except for putting one character's name on the poster, I guess. But I loved their story. That was really compelling and interesting. There was just so much about the world of the different towns and the dynamic of the trading and all these things, which is on one hand interesting, but I almost felt like I kind of enjoyed not knowing all of that stuff about Fury Road. I love that it was implied and the explanation of it.
Yeah, it was best left unexamined.
Yes.
In Fury Road, we know there is a place called the Bullet Farm, and the guy who shows up as the leader of that has a lot of guns and bullets. We know what he does.
Done.
It's called the Bullet Farm, and he's got all the bullets.
Yep.
And we know that there's a place called Gas Town, and we have a bunch of vehicles that use gas, so clearly we must trade with them and get their stuff. That's all we need to know.
Yeah, that's it.
The logistics of how those 3 groups trade with each other is not necessary for... all the world building was done in Fury Road, and it was enough. That's all we needed to know about that world.
It's already been tested and proven and worked. Exactly. I also felt like the story, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it, because with Chris Hemsworth, there's some great revenge movies out there, and great revenge stories. And what I always respond to when I see a really good one is you just find yourself rooting so much for the character to get their revenge. You yourself may not be a vengeful person, but in the context of watching this movie, you're just like, murder this person dead in
and
the most
later,
brutal way
if we
possible.
wind up talking about Mandy, this will come up.
Yes, it will. Yeah. I know. They're actually a great double feature.
but agree. So the problem with the Chris Hemsworth character is like in Fury Road, when we discover who Immortan Joe is and the fact that these women were basically sex slaves for him who were just trying to get to their freedom.
Yes.
We want him to get fucked up.
Right.
We're exactly. Like, fuck that dude up.
Yes, exactly. Run him over, back up, and do it again. Like, you just...
Right.
Please.
When he gets his face yanked off by the chain, we're like, yeah, fuck that dude.
Yep.
Good.
Exactly. Whereas this one, I was really surprised that I didn't find myself quite so satisfied by her getting Chris Hemsworth, because we were so involved in his story as well. I almost was looking back and reflecting on it, I was like, I feel like I was more rooting for her to finally get him so that the movie would end, because it was just so long at this point. Like, I didn't feel like it built to that moment you kind of are hoping for the whole time, where it's just all building to just the release of the revenge finally being taken on this guy. It was just kind of like, and it wasn't even a very climactic finish. It was kind of like this long, drawn out, like, I'm almost going to kill you, but I'm also going to take my time. Now I'm going to go plant a tree. And it was just kind of like, oh, okay.
And they never made him vile enough.
That was exactly right. Like, I didn't hate him as much as I feel like I wanted to.
Right.
In a story like this, like, he never was vile enough. Exactly right.
And it's in the Mad Max universe where everybody's just trying to survive. So his story is he's trying to survive,
Right.
Yeah, you mean like everybody else? You know, he's not keeping a bunch of women locked in a bank vault as sex slaves. He's not,
right.
You know, he's not like setting his own people on fire and then eating them. Right.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's such, I didn't even think about that till you said it. How, especially comparing him to the villain of the previous movie.
Right.
You're kind of like, this dude's just out there trying to make a buck and lay stake to some land like everybody else. Like, it's kind of just what everybody else is doing. What about this dude that's way worse? Like, he's sure walking away fine.
Right. Yeah. And so that's, I mean, there's a lot of, and we can go back if you want to, but there's a lot of story stuff that really just kind of didn't feel fully baked. I really feel like if the people I write with had been working on this, we would have hit that moment where Praetorian Jack shows up and where he's like, I'm going to train you. And somebody would have said, you know what? This is the movie. This is the movie. Let's get rid of all this other crap. Let's have her get kidnapped at the beginning and her mother is killed, which is great. Then after she's kidnapped, she meets Praetorian Jack as a kid. He sees something in her and he goes, come with me. I'm going to teach you how to do this. And then the movie is the Praetorian Jack and his sidekick Furiosa ending with his death and her realizing, I have nothing left to stay here for. Now it's time to leave. That's the story.
Love that. Love that.
And that goes straight into Fury Road then, because it's that moment that she makes the decision. I'm going to go get the girls and get them out of here.
And then movie.
And
or
then movie.
like even just building off of that, if you had Chris Hemsworth in the beginning of the movie, like you do, and it's great and it's memorable, and then he's the one that's singularly responsible for the horrible death of her mom.
Right.
If you didn't see him again until the third act of the movie, and you know that her training under this guy and on the truck and learning how to do all this, there's just this fire behind her eyes that, you know, at some point, all of this is going to be weaponized against that guy if she ever sees him again.
Yeah.
And then you see him again, you know, because I feel like that's what these movies like this have always done so well, is just introduce you. I always think of The Count of Monte Cristo, which is like, I love that movie. I love that story, but you just can't wait for revenge to be taken. And there's so much distance between when they've seen each other. It's almost like an obsession with the idea of this vile, wicked dude. But I also feel like casting someone like Chris Hemsworth gives you someone memorable enough to not have to be in the whole movie. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, if you introduce him at the beginning of the movie, you're not going to forget this dude.
You're also going to assume he's coming back later.
100%.
Because it's Chris Hemsworth. He's going to come back later, right?
Exactly. Like, it almost feels like because they got Chris Hemsworth, they were like, we should really expand this. And I was like, I don't know if you...
And having him and thematically, if he's responsible for her mother's death at the beginning, and then in the third act is responsible for Praetorian Jack's death.
Oh, there you go.
And you tie those things together, and you give Furiosa a reason to be furious.
Oh gosh, yeah. Like a horrible history repeating itself.
Right. Then I get, like, she's like, I'm taking that dude out, and then I've had enough of this wasteland shit. I'm going to go grab the ladies and I'm going to get the fuck out of here, right?
Yep.
It would feel like such a obvious segue into that moment.
Yes.
Tie the movies together so closely. Yeah. But it felt like a story that was a little undercooked.
It felt a little bit like, I was talking to my son afterwards because we were watching it, and it almost felt like if all three Star Wars prequels were made as one movie.
Right.
Where it's almost like too much story for one movie, and it was way more story than we were expecting or asking for. Yeah. And I'm like, it's cool that you have this, but I don't know if I needed all of this.
Yeah.
But then, like, sandwiching it all into one 3-hour movie, like first act, baby Anakin pod racing, and then you have him training, and then you have him going, like, that's what it felt like, was 3 movies.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It is. It's all 3 of the prequels jammed into one prequel.
It's just all jammed together. But with all that said, like, that was the stuff that I really came up against in my reaction to the movie. But there was also still, like, I really love that Chris Hemsworth was cast so against type. Like, I just love when actors get to do that. I just rewatched Collateral not too long ago. And like, I love
that's
like
still
my
like one of my favorite Tom Cruise movies.
Oh, 100%. It's so because there's something really exciting about seeing someone that you're so used to doing one thing, doing something completely different. You know, the other example for me is Tom Cruise in Collateral, and then I love seeing Bruce Willis in Death Becomes Her. Right. Like, just seeing him wacky and nerdy and wimpy, and it's
wimpy.
Yeah, it's just so exciting because you feel like you're seeing an actor have some fun and do something outside the box. So I really loved seeing I loved the casting of Chris Hemsworth. I just feel like the story could have used the character differently, but I loved how over the top he was. Like, I never got tired of that. Like the fake nose and stuff. I was like, I'm here for all of it. I don't even care.
Yeah, I agree with you though that if they had leaned on all the stuff you get for free by having it Chris Hemsworth, and then you do what you talk about, where you have him be memorable at the beginning, and then he goes away. Yeah. But he shows up in the third act. The audience is going to be like, "Oh my God, this is going to be very important."
Here we go.
Here we go. Right.
Yep. Exactly.
You would have got all that for free.
Yeah.
And there are the opening rescue, the mom rescuing Furiosa, one of the best sequences in the movie. Excellent. It's fantastic.
It's excellent.
Anything she does with Praetorian Jack, I really like. The actor who's playing Praetorian Jack, I really like the character. I really like the dynamic between the two of them. So much so that I just wanted more of that. I wanted the movie to be that. Yeah. So that sequence is great.
Love that sequence. That was when they were on the road for that extended action sequence where he doesn't know she's on the truck.
Right.
I looked at my watch because I was like, this is what I thought I was coming to see.
Exactly.
And it's finally happening.
And it's so late in the movie. You're like, I hope we get more of this.
Yes. I was like, I hope this is not going to end. But with that said, their story was so interesting. Like, when the action sequence did end, their relationship was compelling. Where that was going was compelling. When he ultimately, when they're going to do that last drop, that whole action sequence was really well staged. Like, I was kind of blown away by how they choreographed the truck going through the gate, and then her not being in the gate, and then there was just the geography of how they choreographed it. There was so much storytelling in it that I really liked.
Yeah, and it finally does the whole Praetorian Jack storyline with her really does the thing that George Miller is best at, which is implying things without stating them outright. So.
Yeah.
In a world where everybody is food for everyone else, everybody is just predators preying on whatever they can take from anybody else. To have this guy look at this girl and go, I see something special in you. I don't want anything from you. I'm not going to take anything, but I'm going to show you how to survive in this world. Makes him so interesting in that world, because it's a world of predators. And here's the wolf going, oh, you're a wolf cub. I'm going to take you in. I'm going to turn you into a wolf too. The question of why he's doing that, what he sees in her, what about his life put him in a position where when he saw her, he went, I need to help this one. Yeah. I need to make her strong like me. And none of it is ever spoken. None of it's ever said. So it's all just implied. That's the George Miller storytelling that I want.
100%. I totally agree. Like it's a blank canvas that implies things about it that you can kind of fill in with your own imagination, but they also just really intrigue you. I really love movies with characters that say so little because of that. And Mad Max is obviously the staple of that. But I did love that aspect of that character, Praetorian Jack. I was like, okay, here we go. Like, I'm so fascinated by this dude. And then, of course, spoiler, he dies. But
you knew he was going to, because Praetorian Jack's not in Fury Road, so something happens to him. Yeah,
but go ahead, finish your thought.
I was just going to say that sequence, the introduction of Praetorian Jack, and then the sequence of that last run. That's where the movie wakes back up again.
Yes,
that's a great way of putting it. I'd been asleep for an hour, and then I'm like, am I back in a Fury Road movie?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. because so much of everything before, with all the politics and all the navigating of power, it was just kind of white noise. I felt a little bit, not that it couldn't have been more interesting, but like you said, it was a little half-baked, but also just wasn't the movie that we needed. But because what I was going to say a second ago was, this is one of my big problems with, well, I'm sure everyone's problems with prequels,
Yeah.
is you know a great deal about where this goes. So
Yeah.
I'm not worried about Furiosa's life, obviously. I'm
Right.
just concerned about her getting her revenge, or at least I thought I was going to be.
And how she gets her arm ripped off.
And that was one thing I was going to say.
Yeah, like-
I really loved that, because it wasn't until halfway through the movie that I remembered, oh, wait a second, she doesn't have an arm in Fury Road. And I was like, oh, how is this going to happen? And that is the only way that a prequel can really do anything interesting, is by saying, we know that you know the answer to this question, or you know the result of this equation. We're just going to surprise you with how.
Right.
You know the what, we're going to surprise you with the how. And that was really cool. But that did bum me out about Praetorian Jack. Because I was like, I know I don't see him in another movie, so I don't know if either their romance is going to end, and that's going to be sad, or he's dead. Either way, it's not going to work out.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I do not, story-wise, I did not find Furiosa the equal of Fury Road, because of all the things we've just been talking about. The fact that the movie sort of goes to sleep in the middle hour and then wakes back up at the end.
I mean, it takes a few naps throughout too. But
it takes some naps, which is unfortunate, because after such an amazing opening sequence and then all the awesome Praetorian Jack stuff at the end, there's just a middle that doesn't need to be there, explaining a bunch of stuff we don't need answers to. Yeah, which is unfortunate. And that is prequelitis. Prequelitis is, oh, we're doing a prequel, so we have to explain a bunch of stuff you've never actually asked. We need to show you how Han Solo got his famous blaster. No, you don't have to show us that. He has a blaster. It's fine. We don't care.
Exactly. That kind of goes back to what we already said about just living in the world of Immortan Joe and all that. It's like, I don't need to be here so much. I don't need to know so much about this. Like, this is
I don't need to know the politics of the three towns trading with each other.
I literally don't. But you're right. It's prequelitis, where it's, hey, remember this guy? Well, what about this? And I'm like, I don't care.
Did you ever wonder how this guy got this thing? No, I didn't. He just had it. It's fine.
Yeah. You're answering a question I'm not asking, you know.
That is prequelitis, and that is the big problem prequels run into, is they're like, instead of storytelling, they go, remember this? That's not going. Remember this is not storytelling.
I was really hoping for Furiosa to be a movie that it's just like a prequel has to demand that its existence is required, or else we don't need it. And there's examples of prequels that have done that pretty well, but it is the thing that every prequel comes up against, is why do you need to exist?
Why do I need to know that? Yeah. We talked a lot about this story, but the thing I want to talk to you about, because as a director who's done movies with significant practical effects, one of the things that everybody was so impressed with in Fury Road is the heavy reliance on practical effects. There is some CGI in there, obviously. There's some moments that are clearly, visual effects, but it was a movie that had incredible. If everything felt real, everything felt like it had weight to it, because so much of it is practical. When those cars slammed into each other, that was real vehicles slamming into each other and
running into, exactly,
and parts flying off and all of that stuff. Furiosa goes so heavy into the CGI, almost nothing felt real. Everything, and not just visual effects, but in many cases, not great visual effects, where it was very clear, oh, that's really clearly just a visual effect matte painting right there, and it's not, and the parallax is wrong, and it doesn't feel like a real thing behind them.
And the contrast is it's only made more stark by the fact that Fury Road was so practical, because that's part of your expectations going into this, right? So they do, like, I think one example that really stood out to me was when in that truck sequence, when they're on the road and she's the stowaway sequence, which is an incredible piece of action. But I think it was were they like paragliding or whatever it was, like guys were trying to paraglide down, and it was very obviously CG, and it was so disappointing, because I remember watching Fury Road and the guys on the poles that were like coming down, swooping on cars.
Those are dudes on poles.
Pulling them up. Yes. And I remember watching that in the theater going, there is no possible way. And like watching the behind the scenes, and seeing them shoot that practically, rehearse it practically, and all this stuff, I was like, I cannot believe this is real. Like, that is insane.
You had guys on actual motorcycles jumping over the rig, throwing stuff at it. Yes. Those are real guys throwing real stuff.
They literally just rehearse these things, stage these things, and it unto itself is spectacle, right? And so you go, hey, all the guys that did that did another movie, and to see a sequence that resembles it, every time that they didn't, it was so disappointing. It kind of just deflated me a little bit. Just like, okay.
So as a director, why? What we know he knows how to do the practical effects. It is established. He knows what he's doing. What is the cause of that? Is it money? Is it time? Is it studio forcing something on you wouldn't have otherwise done? What's happening there? So
I'm not going to speak for George because I like George.
I'm saying as a director, what things have you seen that would have caused you to do that?
Well, here's the thing is I do get suspicious of things because it does feel, this sounds really harsh, but it's in response to all the challenges that come with making movies. It just feels lazy, where it feels like this, like the paragliding as an example, just because I said it and it's on my mind. I'm sure that would have been very complicated to do practically, but I can't imagine that it was so complicated that it couldn't have been figured out given more time, more budget, and maybe those things weren't available. But it's also the whole issue I have with the Star Wars prequels is we saw movies with practical sets and practical creatures, and that was part of the magic of it. And I feel like that's what really disappointed the fandom from at least our generation that grew up with the originals, but without prequels, is when the prequels came out, it felt a little lazy, like subconsciously. Like, I don't think I'm sure people have outright said George Lucas is lazy for that, but I feel like as kids or like a younger audience or, uneducated audience, it might just be a subconscious feeling. It just feels a little bit lazier, because like even think of The Dark Knight, right? Like, I love Christopher Nolan. I love like the extent he goes to be practical. Christian Bale jumping off that building in Hong Kong for that sequence where he's just gliding through Hong Kong and then goes and arrests the one dude.
Right.
He's just jumping off a building. It's not actually that complicated. The spectacle of it is the fact that someone did that. Like seeing a practical human standing on that building, that feels like a spectacle because it's actually happening, and then jumping, you're like, okay, Tom Cruise holding on to, the jet in Rogue Nation, or like, I actually thought his motorcycle jump off the cliff was kind of like not as exciting, but the whole thing is everything he did was the fact that he's doing it is the spectacle of it, and you could have very easily.
I mean, in Dark Knight, they literally rip an airplane in half with another airplane.
It's absolutely bonkers, but you can tell that they're doing it. And that's whenever I go back and watch old Hollywood movies, like Ben-Hur or like Cleopatra.
You mean the ones where actual people were being killed in the stunts?
Yeah, when people are actually like dying and you're exactly. That death was real. That's how committed we were.
Yeah, that guy actually died.
But what always astounds me, or like Lawrence of Arabia is another great example where these movies like have thousands of extras, but that they are 1,000 extras. Like there are 1,000 people standing out there wearing 1,000 costumes.
Yep.
And you just, there's a palpable aspect to it. And that's what always, I think it's underestimated for me is you can just tell when it's fake on an unconscious level that just kind of sort of pulls you out of it. And I felt that with Furiosa quite a few times. Whereas Mad Max, I didn't feel. I was in shock at how real it was. Zemeckis said this, and it's ironic that he says it because he's guilty of some really bad CGI stuff. But he said it's the imperfection that makes film magic.
Yeah.
And so what's great about someone doing some crazy stunt and filming it is, wow, when the focus buzzes a little bit because the guy missed his mark and you didn't know and you have to try and catch it, like,
right.
Those are all the imperfections that make it feel alive and make it feel real. And when it's just too perfect, it feels artificial. Like it just,
Yeah, those moments when it feels like the camera's struggling to catch up.
Yes.
Makes it feel
You
so
feel that.
real. You feel the weight of
Exactly.
it. That like this thing is happening so fast and so violently that the observer is struggling not to be killed by it, and they're struggling to keep
Right.
up. And I mean, obviously you don't want people actually struggling not to die, but the feel
Right.
of that when things are practical. I mean, there's moments in Fury Road where things are happening. I'm like, I would be terrified to be a cameraman right now.
Oh
There's
my
just
gosh,
metal
yeah.
flying through the air and vehicles
I thought
flipping
that.
over, and yeah.
There were so many times watching that movie that I thought cameramen died.
Yeah.
Like, sincerely, I was like, I need to find out. There's going to be some like post-mortem after the credits, like dedicated to
Dude, that's the
list of
73 dudes
camera
we
guys.
killed making this movie. Yeah,
Seriously.
and there's moments like that in Furiosa. I mean, when she's hanging on the back of the rig, that feels real, and it's shaking, and the camera's shaking, and she seems terrified. And I assume the cameraman is terrified, hanging on the back of that rig with this camera, or hanging on the bottom. I mean, I think it was missing those moments that really made Furiosa struggle for me. Missing all of those moments.
Yes.
And then that big weird dead spot in the center.
Yeah. And in that spot.
Yeah.
There's also a thing about the value of trying to at least do elements practically, because like we've talked about before too, like how the best CGI works in combination with some practical element, right? Is there's just a reality to how physics work, whereas if you haven't, I'm just referencing the paraglider guys just because we already talked about it, but like, I don't actually know if the physics of how that is even happening fully makes sense. Like the violence of the parachute, is that it feels like it should maybe be a little more violent, like trying to hit the, like, it just feels like there are aspects to it, just the physics of it, which is why I'm always so fascinated by how Christopher Nolan, when he can't do something practically, his response is, well, can we do it with a miniature?
Right.
Because, and Peter Jackson does a lot of that similarly too, but he's also guilty of some bad CGI. But it allows you to capture at least an element of the physics involved with this event, right? Or this thing happening. And it's almost like it's to a detriment when your imagination can go too wild, because you might be thinking beyond what's actually plausible or realistic.
Yeah. So I think the top 5 for today is best prequels, and Joseph has some behind the scenes stuff he wanted to share, interrupting our previous conversation. All right, Joseph,
how dare you.
Give us your trivia. Give us your trivia.
Okay, so do you know when the screenplay for Furiosa was originally written?
I
No
do.
idea. Brett knows.
When was it
written
written originally?
before Fury Road.
Was it?
Exactly.
Oh, it's too bad they didn't shoot it before Fury Road.
And it was, he originally wanted to shoot it back to back, but I would assume due to funding that he decided to go with Fury Road.
I wish I live in the alternate timeline where that was how it was done, and I saw Furiosa first.
And when they were talking about casting, Charlize Theron was kind of disappointed because of the delay, because the screenplay was her template for her character.
Right.
And supposedly with Furiosa not doing so well, the quote unquote prequel, which we've already seen for Mad Max, they were going to do another one of those, I assume, with Tom Hardy. But obviously that did not happen. Now, as far as why the CGI, I have to agree. I thought the trailer for it, I thought it was a joke the first time I saw it. I was like, what is this? And then I was like, wait, this is real? And now, Ty, you didn't have a problem with the bikes? The bikes that just somehow just are on a fucking rail.
Oh,
they don't move.
Yeah. Some of those shots. No, I'm talking about the physical interaction between. Furiosa's mom and the and the stuff. Yeah. That also felt real. But yes, there are some long tracking shots where it's like, oh, nothing on the screen right now is a real thing. Yeah,
but it seems as though the incentives that Australia gave to George Miller, it was almost half the budget.
Oh, dang.
So when obviously with Mad Max, they're like, yeah, we're going to Namibia, or I forget where it was, they're like, we're not shooting Australia. So half the budget for the film was basically given by Australia. So
that's too bad.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's why they said everything looked like a CGI shot because it was.
And like the thing is, like, I understand that there's sometimes you have to do CGI because you're trying to do something that there's no physical version of doing, like portraying a post-apocalyptic world, you know. And I feel like those are things that there are elements of that the brain forgives, but the brain really struggles to forgive the things that feel like you just unconsciously clock the things that, like, I feel like they could have done that, or I feel like they could have shot in a place like this, or I don't know.
And so that's sort of the physical production piece of it, which was to me quite disappointing because so much of the charm of Fury Road is lost when it becomes sort of the CGI soup. But story wise, you know, I mean, we spent a good 45 minutes talking about the ways the story didn't work. So Joseph's thing, his idea for the top 5 is best prequels.
Okay, awesome. Love that. There's some good ones on here. I mean, I'll say right now, I mean, I feel silly, but I've thought this for a long time. I am convinced that Monsters University is the best prequel ever made.
You know what?
And I'm
That's
dead
fair.
serious.
That is fair.
That movie is
that one
such
should
a
definitely
great
go on
prequel.
the list. Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, Pixar, man, for a while they were just magic. They were just magic.
No, it's true. And it did. The thing is that movie succeeds in all the things that most prequels fail. Like, we know that they're going to go to Monsters, Inc.
Right.
Like, we know that. But the fact that that's not their only dream, but also just the deviations that the plot takes, where now the question is, well, I know where they go, but how the heck are they going to get there now?
Right.
That's how you do it right. And I was like, I can't believe this movie is as good as it is. I mean, I can believe it, but it's just so hard to make a prequel.
I love The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yeah,
I love that movie.
It's classic.
I mean, the fact that it is a prequel is almost irrelevant because
exactly.
Because all of those movies seem to occur out of time.
That is, it took me so long to even know it was.
Right.
Like, it just wasn't even clear to me, because I agree, like, they just all exist. I mean, I think the same goes for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I get that it takes place before Raiders, but
because Karen Allen's not in it.
Like, it's how else do you even justify, like, it just feels like it exists. It's just another adventure, and that's fine with me. And like, it doesn't have a consequence.
So that's an interesting question, because prequels obviously mean several things. They mean movies that take place in a continuity where the movies already exist, but they take place before the existing continuity movies, right? But in my mind, prequel implies that there's something happening in there that is supposed to inform the later movies.
100%. I agree with that. Totally.
Because Good, Bad, and the Ugly has nothing to do with the later movies.
Nothing.
It just
nothing.
I'm not saying take it off the list. I'm just saying
his outfit.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the outfit, but the other one that I think of that way is Prey. I loved Prey. I thought it was an amazing movie.
Excellent.
But it has nothing to do with any later Predator movies.
If you didn't see it, your experience watching the original Predator would not be enhanced. And that's kind of what I always think, like, does this movie benefit my experience with the story I already saw, right?
Right.
Which is what Monsters University does very well. It's like, if you go back now and watch Monsters, Inc. again, you're like, oh, this story actually is a little different to me now in a positive way. You know what is another one on the list that I feel like does that is I love X-Men First Class. I think it's probably my favorite X-Men movie.
Is it?
Oh, gosh. Okay. I love that movie. It's not a perfect movie, but it does give you quite a bit of weight to characters, and it tells a story that demands to be told. Like, the movie feels like it has to exist. But tying it to this episode, First Class is a fantastic revenge story, and it absolutely builds what it builds to, as far as, I mean, you saw it, so I just don't want to spoil anything that you forgot. But Magneto finally getting what he's been trying to get the whole time is so satisfying. And that's what it's like the level of moment I wanted Furiosa to have, but it didn't.
Right. So are we counting movies that are necessary for later movies, or are we just counting movies that come previous in the timeline? Because things that things that are interesting early stuff that inform the later movies. Obviously, Godfather Part 2 is not a prequel, but there are the segments with Robert
like
De Niro
the prequel segments
that are the prequel segments.
So good.
And they're so good. And I think they do inform the
I
later
feel like
movies.
it counts, for sure. I definitely think it counts. I mean, it has to, because the prequel element of it is just so iconic.
If we want if we're just talking great movies that predate later great movies, I think Prey is a fantastic movie. I think Prey is one of my favorite Predator movies.
It was a great movie.
So I don't think it's necessary for the later movies, though. So it doesn't.
I think it's just
criteria.
a good Predator movie. Yeah, it doesn't
just
necessarily feel like a prequel more than an episode that exists in an earlier part of the timeline.
Yeah,
like it. But I thought that movie was excellent.
I like Red Dragon, but I think Red Dragon is the inferior Red Dragon movie because Michael Mann's Manhunter is so much better.
So much better. I mean, Red Dragon is another Brett Ratner classic, you know?
Red Dragon is the second best Red Dragon movie.
Oh, what a shame. What was it? Oh, I saw Rogue One was on here too. I actually was surprised by Rogue One. I feel like
Rogue One is Star Wars is sort of like X-Men now. It's just sort of a mess.
Sure,
me.
yeah.
But Rogue One is a Star Wars movie I watched and actually remembered after I had seen it. Rogue One actually tried to tell a story, which is so weird when you're watching a Star Wars movie. Like, oh wait, they're actually telling a story here. This isn't just Jedi, blah blah, random laser, random sword. You know,
and it's interesting because it's like the type of prequel where if you never saw it, you wouldn't lose anything, but if you did see it, you would only gain something. Like it does. Yeah. Like the insight it gives is cool. It's not necessarily critical, but it is enrichment. You know,
and on that topic with Rogue One, if we include TV stuff here, I think Andor is a worthy.
Oh gosh, prequel. Andor's so
great.
Good.
And the other one that is a worthy TV prequel is Better Call Saul, which I normally hate prequels. I have a long-standing hatred of prequels that I've talked about many times.
Yep.
But these are things that are Better Call Saul exposes the world of Breaking Bad in a way you hadn't seen it before that brings new interesting nuance to that world.
Yes.
And the question of what's going to happen to Saul Goodman, I think, is an interesting question because the way that they keep that alive is with the little black and white segments that are after Breaking Bad. So you've got the prequel stuff, but you're also it's sort of that
it's like Godfather 2
thing where it's like, oh, there's stuff that's happening after, and I wonder what's going to happen there. Over the course of watching that, you understand why he makes the sacrifice he makes at the end to save her. And I'm like, and by the way, the whole time I was watching that movie is, if this show kills Kim Wexler, I'm going to fucking find the people who wrote this show and I'm going to fuck them up.
What did you do?
What did you do to Kim Wexler?
It's so good.
But the tension of what's going to happen to Kim carries the tension because we know he's not going to die because he's still alive in Better Call Saul, but we don't know what happens to Kim.
And that's the only thing you can do with a prequel, right?
Yes.
Is you can't put that suspense on a character we know goes on, but it's brilliant putting it on her.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a great show. I love that show. It's actually the tragic thing about Rogue One, I thought, was we know that none of these characters show up in anything else we've ever seen.
Right.
And it's only made heartbreaking when you like them. Like Donnie Yen's character in that movie, I was like, why does he have to go?
Right.
Why can't he just be in everything? But I know he won't be. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
K2SO is awesome too, but it's like the reverse effect where you're like, the suspense is, I know that no one makes it. Like they can't.
Well, and we know that the plans get sent to the rebellion, so we're not unclear on what happens.
Exactly.
We know they got the plans.
It's just all the how. Like that's the only thing they can. That's the only thing they can deliver on, right? Because we know they succeed somehow. But
and there is. We know they don't show up in the later movies, but there is sort of that tension of maybe some of them get away. Now, obviously, if you've seen the movie, spoiler alert,
they don't.
Announcer voice, nobody got away. But yeah, they do at least give you that tension. I know my writing partner Daniel is a big fan of Pearl. I didn't like Pearl as much as I liked X, but I think it's a worthy.
I think it's worthwhile.
I think it's worthwhile.
I feel like a lot of people would be really upset if we didn't include it. But
yeah, I think Pearl is worthwhile.
It's worthwhile for sure. I feel the same way. Where I didn't like it as much as anybody, X, but I thought it was cool.
We need to find who put Alien versus Predator on this list and have them killed.
It was one of the patrons. They suggested it.
Okay, have that person killed. See to it, Joseph.
Okay.
It's probably that one guy. That one guy is the worst.
Oh man, that one guy that likes Alien versus Predator a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I think the list we have, I'm pretty satisfied with.
Let me see. Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good list.
And the main thing for me is that these are 5 prequels, and my well-known hatred of prequels, and I have a well-known hatred of prequels. Any one of these 5 movies is a movie I would sit down and rewatch right now.
Yeah,
which is
100%.
I mean, that's saying something. When it's a prequel and I would sit down and rewatch it right now, that's saying something. And I need to go rewatch X-Men First Class because you like it so much, and I think it may have been tainted by its association with lesser movies.
Well, now I'm worried that I'm overhyping it. Like, it sucks, but it's interesting.
No. I need to go rewatch that. Have we done the thing, Joseph?
We've done the thing. We're good.
Thank you, Brett, for talking about Furiosa with me.
Oh,
and
man, of course.
The most important thing that has happened here is that Wes really, really wanted to talk about Furiosa, and now I never will with him because I've already...
I saved you. He called me.
I got it out of my system.
I feel like it was a couple weeks ago. He was like, I want to talk about it. And I was like, oh, man, he's missing out. Missing out.
Yep.
I'm glad to save you from that.
And again, for the people watching... Wes, he gets in trouble from Jen, his wife, if he doesn't say, please like, subscribe, do whatever the things. The main thing I want everybody to do, I don't care if you like and subscribe. The thing that I want you to do is please leave a comment when you watch this talking about how awesome it was that Wes wasn't here to discuss Furiosa and how much better it was because we had an actual creative director with somebody with actual opinions that make sense talking about Furiosa. So just really rub it in with Wes, how much better it was that he wasn't here.
So, Wes, if you listen back to this episode, that was all Ty. I did not confirm that or condone it.
Now, he feels the same way.
No. I love you, Wes. I love you. I miss you. Come back.
Well, thank you guys for hanging out. And I don't love you the way Wes does. Wes loves everybody. I hate everybody. But I'm glad that you were here. Thank you for showing up, Brett, and doing the thing. And
glad to be
here. I guess we're gonna go.
Yeah.
Are we done?
Thanks, guys.
I guess we're done. Say goodbye, Brett.
Goodbye, Brett.